My girlfriend got pregnant by another guy and started demanding that I marry her and accept someone else's child. I remember the moment she told me. We were sitting on the edge of my living room couch, the late afternoon light filtering through the curtains. She looked at me with eyes full of shame and anger, her hands trembling as she held a small piece of paper. It was a test result, positive. She whispered it, as if afraid the words might break something within us. I'm pregnant. My mind went blank for a second. We had talked about everything else, moving in together, wedding plans, expectations for the future, but this wasn't how I imagined that conversation would go. And the truth was, something didn't add up. My intuition screamed that the father wasn't me. She saw my reaction before I spoke. It's his, she said, voice breaking. Not yours. My heart pounded, confusion and hurt combined into a heavy weight in my chest. The background noise of traffic outside the window felt distant, muffled. I swallowed hard. Who? I asked, though I already knew the answer. She didn't want to say more. She looked away, biting her lip. The silence between us stretched on, oppressive and loud. That evening, we moved through a painful dance of half-truths. She admitted spending time with someone else, late nights, emotional closeness, everything blurred by alcohol and misunderstanding. I didn't want to hear it, but I needed the truth. She confessed that it had happened more than once. The child growing inside her was definitely his. I felt my world shifting. Memories of our happy times, weekend getaways, shared jokes, movie nights seemed to mock me now, mocking the invitation I had thought was our shared future. Everything felt fragile. Over the next days, reality pressed in. She scheduled doctor visits and talked about her emotions, cravings, and fears. I tried to support her, listening, offering help, even suggesting legal advice and financial planning. But then she dropped the bombshell. She expected me to marry her, to accept the child as mine, and raise it with her. That demand felt like a punch. Our conversations turned into battlegrounds. She would say, I want stability, and I would say, I don't know if I can live this lie. We argued late into the night about identity, truth, and whether love was enough to build a relationship on shattered trust. It wasn't just about marriage. It became about self-respect. She pressed, I need your commitment now. I pressed back, what about honesty? What about respect? I wondered how genuine our bond could remain if this child wasn't mine, no matter how deeply I cared for her. I kept thinking, I love her, but I don't love the situation. Her demand forced me to examine who I was and what I stood for. Could I be the stepfather to a child conceived with another man? Would that destroy my sense of identity, or could it somehow become a new kind of love? Yet the future came crashing in. Weeks passed. A baby bump grew, and every prenatal appointment brought me face to face with the new life inside her, even if it wasn't mine. I watched her nervous excitement, the way she read guides on parenthood, made shopping lists for baby clothes. I felt both pride and grief. My mind drifted to scenarios, a quiet acceptance at first, pretending to be happy, an awkward smile when her former partner wanted to be involved, deep sadness at the inevitable questions the child would ask about their father. I didn't want to lie to that child, but the alternative, losing both her and the child, hurt even more. Friends began to notice the tension. Someone asked me if everything was okay. I lied and said fine. Another offered rescuing advice, but I couldn't explain the mess without sounding ashamed. Their silence made me feel more alone. I wish I could say that the decision came to me in a moment of clarity, like some grand cinematic epiphany. But the truth is far less romantic. I paced that nursery for days, sometimes late into the night, staring at the walls like they might whisper the answer. Emily, was patient at first. She'd leave pamphlets on the kitchen table about parenting together. Talk about baby names over dinner. She'd casually mention how we'd tell people we were expecting, as if our love hadn't just been shaken like a snow globe. But under the surface, tension brewed. We avoided eye contact when she passed me the salt. Her hands fidgeted more. The sparkle in her eyes dimmed a little each day. And I knew despite everything, she still wanted me to step up and say, I'm in this, no matter what. I couldn't lie, a part of me did want to. I imagined holding her hand in the delivery room. Rocking a baby to sleep. Family photos with fake smiles that might, one day, become real. But that vision always ended with a shadow behind it, the other man. The biological father. He wasn't just a ghost, he was real. Emily told me bits and pieces, he was someone from her office. A guy who never wanted a relationship, only comfort during a difficult time in her life. He vanished once he found out about the pregnancy. No calls, no support, no sense of responsibility. And yet, knowing he wouldn't be around somehow made things worse. I wouldn't be just a stepfather, I'd be the only father figure this child would know. That felt like a beautiful gift and a cruel burden all at once. Then, one night, everything came to a head. We were in the kitchen. I was washing dishes, trying to ignore the ache in my chest. Emily stood behind me, her voice low but firm. "Why are you doing this to me?" I turned around, startled. Doing what? This, limbo. This silence. I'm carrying a child, and I feel more alone now than before I told you. I dried my hands and leaned against the counter. Because I don't know what you want me to say. You want me to pretend like none of this happened? Like it's all okay? I want you to choose us, she said. Me. This baby. Our future. But it's not our baby, I said. My voice cracked despite my effort to stay calm. It's his. Her face twisted in pain, and for a moment, I hated myself for saying it. That doesn't mean it can't be yours too, she whispered. Not by blood, but by heart. I looked at her, really looked. There was no mask left. No bravado. Just a woman terrified of losing the person she still believed in. A woman who'd made a mistake, but also had enough hope left to ask for a second chance. That night, I slept on the couch. But I didn't sleep much. I kept thinking about my father, who left when I was 8. About how hard my mom fought to keep our little world from collapsing. About the man I swore I'd become someday, the one who stayed. In the morning, I did something stupid. I drove to his place. I had his address. Emily had let it slip one day, angry and tired. I knocked on the door without knowing what I'd say. No answer. I knocked again. Eventually, a guy opened the door, bleary-eyed, unshaven. He looked at me like I was selling something. Yeah? You know Emily. She's pregnant. He didn't flinch. Just sighed. Yeah. And she's alone. You walked away. He stared at me for a second, then laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. I didn't sign up for that. It was a mistake. She knew the deal. I felt my fists clench. But I didn't throw a punch. I just looked at him and said, I'm not here to fight. I just wanted to see what kind of man leaves his kid behind. And I left. The drive home was quiet. No music, just the hum of the tires. I thought about how easy it was to be like him, distant, selfish, untouchable. How much harder it was to stay. To choose love when it came with a wound. When I got back, Emily was in the nursery again, sitting in the rocking chair. She didn't look up when I entered. I stood in the doorway for a long time before I spoke. I went to see him. She froze. Why? To understand. Her eyes finally met mine, full of fear. And? I think I get it now. I think I get why you're scared. And why you want this so badly. She nodded slowly, but didn't speak. I stepped into the room, sat down on the floor in front of her. I'm not ready to say yes. But I'm not walking away either. That was the truth. The only truth I could offer. Her lips trembled, and then she reached down and held my hand. We stayed like that for a long time, surrounded by unfinished dreams and one impossible decision neither of us could make alone. The days that followed weren't peaceful. They weren't filled with healing conversations or gentle moments of rebuilding trust. They were awkward. Heavy. Each morning, we walked past each other in the kitchen like co-workers after a workplace scandal, civil, but tense. I made coffee. She made oatmeal. Sometimes we exchanged a few quiet words. But the elephant in the room had grown too large to ignore. I didn't move back into the bedroom. I stayed on the couch, telling myself it was temporary. I still hadn't said yes. I hadn't promised to stay forever. But I hadn't left either. That middle ground began to feel like a prison. She kept attending prenatal appointments alone. That broke something in me. Every time she left with her coat zipped up, her belly starting to show, I felt a guilt that gnawed at me. But I couldn't bring myself to go. I wasn't ready to pretend to be something I wasn't. Then one Saturday morning, she returned from the clinic with ultrasound pictures in hand. She placed them gently on the table, next to my coffee mug. I thought maybe you'd want to see him, she said. I didn't answer. I stared at the grainy black and white image. A small, curled-up shape. A heartbeat frozen in motion. I knew it wasn't mine. I knew that in my bones. And yet, something in that image tugged at me. I picked it up without realizing it. Held it like it was fragile. "Do you have a name picked out?" I asked, before I could stop myself. She smiled, just a flicker, faint and cautious. "Liam. If it's a boy." "Liam," I repeated. It sounded distant. Like a word from a different life. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I remembered how my dad never showed up to my school events. How he missed birthdays. How his absence felt like a black hole I could never quite fill. I thought about how it would feel for this child, Liam, to grow up never knowing his biological father. And then I thought about how Emily was trying to give him something better. Even if it meant asking me to be that something. Eventually, I got up and walked into the nursery. The moonlight poured through the window, bathing the crib in silver light. The baby clothes were neatly folded. A plush teddy bear sat in the corner, waiting. I sat down in the rocking chair and let it creak beneath my weight. She found me there a little after midnight. I didn't hear her come in. She didn't say anything, just leaned in the doorway, watching me. "You used to sit there and talk to him," I said quietly. "Like he could hear you." She stepped inside and sat on the floor, leaning against the wall. "I still do." I nodded. "What do you say?" "That I'm scared. That I hope he's kind. That I hope he never finds out how complicated his first year was." I looked down at my hands. "Do you tell him about me?" She hesitated. "I say you're here. That you're trying." I took a deep breath. "I don't want to be his replacement. I'm not his father. But maybe I could be something else. Something better." She looked up, eyes wide. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm still scared," I said. "But I'm willing to try. I don't want to walk away from you. And I don't want him to grow up thinking he's a mistake." We sat in silence again, but it felt different this time. Warmer. Like something buried was starting to thaw. Over the next few weeks, things began to shift. Slowly. I joined her for one of the checkups. Held her hand in the waiting room. Heard the heartbeat for the first time, and it hit me like a freight train. I wasn't just an outsider anymore. Whether I liked it or not, I was part of this story now. We started talking again, not about marriage, not yet, but about the future. What kind of home we wanted. What kind of people we hoped to become. Emily laughed more, and sometimes I did too. We weren't fixed, but we were trying. Then one day, while cleaning out the closet, I found a small box tucked behind a stack of books. Inside were old photos, us at the beach, smiling in the golden light, her in my hoodie, laughing over bird pancakes. And in the bottom of the box, a note I'd written her a year earlier. I didn't even remember writing it. "I don't care what happens. I just want to grow old with you." The words hit harder than I expected. Because now, what happens had become a baby that wasn't mine. A choice that wasn't ours. A future that had rewritten itself. But I realized something as I folded the note and put it back. Maybe the words still mattered. Maybe love wasn't about perfection. Maybe it was about showing up, even when the road had twisted into something unrecognizable. And so, one evening, as we sat on the couch watching a dumb reality show, I turned to her. I think I want to be there. For real. Not just around. But in it. With you. With him." She stared at me like she didn't quite believe it. "You mean it?" she asked. I nodded. "I can't promise I won't struggle. Or mess up. But yeah. I'm in." She cried then, not loud sobs, just quiet tears. She curled into my side, and I held her, feeling her warmth and the steady beat of new life growing between us. Everything changed after that night. Not suddenly, like a flip switch, but gradually, like the first signs of spring after a long, frozen winter. There was no single moment when I could say we were okay again. But slowly, we found a rhythm. I moved back into the bedroom. The couch, which had become my quiet punishment and her silent reminder, went back to being just a couch. I started joining her more often in doctor's visits, late-night ice cream runs, baby-name debates that lasted far longer than necessary. We fought less. Laughed more. But beneath it all, I could still feel the echo of everything we'd been through. One night, I asked her why she didn't tell me sooner. About the affair. About him. About the pregnancy. She took a long time to answer. Because I thought I'd already lost you, she said finally. And when I realized I might not. I didn't know how to keep you without breaking you. That answer hurt, but I understood it in a way I couldn't before. Love makes us do strange things. It twists our judgment, makes us hide things in the name of protecting the people we care about. Sometimes, the fear of losing someone becomes so overwhelming that we choose silence over truth. But silence has its own cost. And now, we were living through that debt, paying it back day by day, with every honest conversation and every awkward moment of growth. As her belly grew, so did the reality of what was coming. We started getting serious about preparing cribs, clothes, bottles, car seats. We took a parenting class together, surrounded by other couples who seemed so sure of themselves, so confident in their roles. I felt like an imposter at first. But then, one night, the instructor talked about how families come in all forms. How love, not biology, defines a parent. That hit me hard. I wasn't Liam's father by blood. But I was showing up. I was choosing him. Every day. We had a small baby shower. Just a few friends. I expected awkwardness, maybe even judgment. But to my surprise, they were warm, supportive. One friend, Mark, pulled me aside, drink in hand, and said, "Takes guts, man." A lot of guys would have run. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me still wanted to run some days. But those words stuck with me. Then, at 36 weeks, something unexpected happened. Emily's water broke. Early. It was the middle of the night. She shook me awake, her face pale and full of panic. "It's time," she whispered. We rushed to the hospital. The drive was a blur, red lights, sharp turns, my hands gripping the wheel tighter than necessary. I kept telling her it would be okay. I didn't know if it would, but I needed her to believe it. At the hospital, everything moved fast. Nurses, monitors, paperwork. I was handed scrubs and told to wait outside while they prepped her. That waiting room felt like a prison, sterile, bright, full of worry. Eventually, I was allowed in. She looked scared, exhausted. But when she saw me, she squeezed my hand like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to earth. The labor was long. Painful. I'd seen it in movies, heard stories, but nothing prepared me for the sound of someone you love screaming in agony. I held her hand. Wiped her forehead. Whispered encouragement, even when my own knees shook. Then, after hours of chaos, he was born. Liam. The room went quiet as his first cry echoed. They placed him in her arms, and something inside me cracked open. He was so small. So loud. So real. Emily looked at me, eyes full of tears. "He's here." I stepped closer. Looked down at this tiny person with a face scrunched like he was annoyed at being woken from a long nap. And I felt something I didn't expect. Not confusion. Not regret. Love. It wasn't immediate, not the fireworks people talk about. But it was there, raw, hesitant, growing with each breath he took. She looked up at me. "Do you want to hold him?" I hesitated. Then nodded. The nurse guided him into my arms, and I stared down at a child I didn't create, but somehow felt responsible for anyway. His eyes opened, just a little. And I swear, in that moment, something passed between us. Something silent, but powerful. "I'm here," I whispered. Emily reached out and touched my arm. "You don't have to pretend, you know." "I'm not pretending," I said. "I still don't know what the future looks like. But I want to find out. With you. With him." We stayed in the hospital for a couple days. Visitors came and went. Photos were taken. Bottles were warmed. And in between the exhaustion and the crying and the paperwork, we began to feel like a family. Not perfect. But real. The days after Liam came home were a blur, an endless cycle of feeding, rocking, crying, changing, and desperately trying to catch a few minutes of sleep between shifts. Emily looked like a storm had passed through her, and I didn't look much better. But every time I held Liam and felt his tiny body settle against my chest, something quiet and solid started to grow inside me. I kept waiting for the doubts to come roaring back. Waiting for the resentment to sneak up behind me while I was alone with him at 3 a.m. But they didn't, not in the way I'd feared. Sure, there were hard moments. Times when I saw a flicker of him, the biological father, in Liam's eyes or his expressions. It made me pause. Made me feel like an intruder in someone else's family photo. But then Liam would curl his fingers around mine, or let out a sigh in his sleep, and I'd remember, I'm the one here. I'm the one rocking him to sleep. That has to count for something. Emily changed too. There was a softness in her now that hadn't been there before. A quiet, raw appreciation. She never pressured me, not anymore. She didn't ask when we'd get married, didn't push for declarations. She just let us be two people rebuilding something from the ruins. But something had shifted in me. The kind of shift that isn't loud or sudden, but fundamental. One morning, about 3 weeks after we brought Liam home, I found myself alone in the living room with him, the sun just beginning to creep through the windows. He was sleeping on my chest, his small breaths rising and falling in perfect rhythm. I looked down at him, and for the first time, I felt like a father, not by accident, not by obligation, but by choice. And that choice hit me harder than anything else had. Because love isn't always lightning bolts and certainty. Sometimes it's quiet decisions made in the dark. It's showing up when you're scared. Staying when you have every reason to leave. Choosing love, again and again, even when the road takes a turn you didn't expect. Later that day, I sat down with Emily in the nursery. I want to do something, I said. She looked up from where she was folding clothes. What's that? I want to be listed on the birth certificate. She blinked, stunned. You're sure? I nodded. I know he's not mine. Not by blood. But I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I want him to know that officially, legally, emotionally, he wasn't abandoned. That he had someone who chose him. She didn't say anything at first. Just stared at me, her eyes shimmering. Then she walked over and kissed me, softly, slowly, like it meant something deep. And it did. In the weeks that followed, we took the steps. Paperwork. Appointments. Conversations with legal advisors. It wasn't simple. But it felt right. That decision didn't solve everything. We still had bad days. Nights where Liam wouldn't sleep, where Emily and I argued over bottles and schedules and exhaustion. We were still learning how to co-parent, how to love again without pretending the past never happened. But it felt real. It felt earned. A few months later, on a quiet Sunday morning, I sat on the back porch watching the sunrise with Liam asleep in my arms. Emily stepped out, wrapped in a sweater, holding 2 mugs of coffee. You're getting good at this, she said with a smile. Fake it till you make it, I joked, though I knew by then I wasn't faking it anymore. She sat beside me. You know, sometimes I wonder how different things might have been. If none of this happened. I used to think about that too, I said. But now? I don't. Because this is our story. Messy. Complicated. But ours. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and for a while we just sat there in silence, watching the sky turn pink and gold. I think the thing I learned, the hardest thing, really, is that love isn't always about perfection or clean beginnings. Sometimes it's about forgiveness. Sometimes it's about choosing people even when they've made the wrong turn. And sometimes, it's about holding a child who isn't yours and realizing that you'd do anything in the world to protect them anyway. I never thought I'd find myself here, fathering a child born from someone else's mistake. But life has a way of rewriting you when you least expect it. And sometimes, if you let it, those new pages are better than anything you could have written yourself. Thank you for watching the video, like it if you watched the video to the end and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.